So when you think back on your career, which you're just cooking with Crisco, I will tell you right now, do you have a moment that just brought you is such joy and laughter? I mean, do you have one of those?
I have several. One of the things that comes to mind was I'll tell you a quick story. So I don't know if your listeners know who Les Brown is, but he's a Black motivational speaker, one of the best in the world. And the reason
Oh
I
yeah,
say that is because there's other Les Browns, and so I'm not
right.
talking racist. I just
Orchestra
want you to
people.
understand who he is because there's several. So just so you understand. But years ago, I was in business and I got a postcard that said, "Watch the greatest motivate." This is before I was a speaker. This is back in the like when it was 89, 90, 1990, before you were born, Jane. So you have to
Yeah.
Google
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I was
so
a twinkle.
yeah, so I got this postcard. This is kind of a long story, but it'll be worth it. You might say it's a long road to a tiny house, but I'll try to make the payoff make sense.
Oh, I know it
So
will.
so I got this postcard that said, "Watch the best motivational speakers in the world. Get a Prime Star satellite." So this is before Dish TV and all those other things. So I spent $500 and I got this satellite dish in a big box, and you had to put it up on your roof, and you had to aim it to the southern sky. And in order to get the signal tuned in, you had to have a TV set. So here I climbed up on the roof with one of those remember those small TVs that had a VHS player in the bottom of it? So
Oh
you
yeah,
could play a
yeah. Oh
VHS
yeah.
tape. So it was one of those. So I climbed up on the roof with this small portable TV set, an extension cord, and I'm drilling into the roof to put this satellite dish on my roof to aim to the southern sky. And I've got this little Cracker Jack box compass to try to find south, and I'm tuning it in to this one channel. We're not talking 300 channels. This satellite dish only had one channel. It was the channel from the dish. I get it tuned in, and on the screen is this gentleman by the name of Les Brown. And he's talking about, he's a motivation. I'd never seen a motivational speaker like that. Yes, I'd heard Earl Nightingale and positive, but I'd never seen a true motivational speaker, Les Brown. So I'm watching Les, and I'm on the roof, and now I'm saddled. I'm on the top of the peak of the roof, legs on each side, watching the TV, and I am just mesmerized by this presentation. He was on PBS and he was on Prime Star, and he was giving his presentation, and I'm just fascinated by his storytelling and the humor and the laughter and the crying, and it starts to rain. Now picture this: I'm on the roof with a TV set, one hand on a big metal dish, a satellite dish, holding a TV set in the middle of rain, and I don't want to move because, I've got everything tuned in. My wife steps out of the house and says, "Get the hell," said something else, "get off the roof," because, I'm up on the roof with holding a bunch of metal objects. So I carry the TV downstairs, it's got a long extension cord. I put it at the kitchen table, and I am mesmerized watching Les Brown for 45 minutes. It's not over till I win, all the motivational, right? And I turned to my wife and I said, "I'm going to work with him one day." And she looked at me and said, "Are you crazy? He's married to Gladys Knight. He lives in New York. What makes you think that," this is before I was a speaker. I had nothing to do. I just said, "I'm going to work with him one day." So she doesn't really believe. And I guess that's the point, that sometimes we have a dream, and even the people close to us don't believe in our dream. It's not their dream. It's our dream, right?
Right.
So I had the dream. And at the end, he says, "If you want to learn how to be a professional speaker, you should join Toastmasters." And he had been awarded the Golden Gavel, which is one of the highest awards that you could get in Toastmasters, which is learning how to be a public speaker, not like Jane and I, which are professional speakers. We get paid for it. So I went and I joined the local Toastmasters group, and I spent the first year in Toastmasters eating it up. I did table topics, and I did prepared speeches, and I did everything that you do in tabletop in Toastmasters. And I won the ATM and the DTM, and I went up the ranks in Toastmasters. And one of the presentations in Toastmasters was you were supposed to give a speech about a future job that you would have one day. So I gave a presentation that one day I was going to work with Les Brown. And of course, everybody in Toastmasters knew who Les Brown was. Everybody laughed at me. I mean, they laughed at me. I got the worst critique. "You talk too fast. You said, you played with your belt." And they gave me all this bullshit. Pardon me. I didn't even gonna bother to put the button in. But they were teasing me, and I was really demoralized. And I just thought, wow, isn't it interesting how haters are going to hate? And this is before the internet. Like we're talking, 1990. The internet wasn't really out until 94 and started from there. So I left that meeting. And one of the things I'd learned is that there was this organization called the National Speakers Association. And I got a postcard about that. I got to watch postcards, right? And so it was introducing that Les Brown was going to be the opening keynote speaker in Minneapolis in 1994.
Oh, I was there.
So I joined the National Speakers Association strictly so I could watch Les.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I just went there. So I went there. Say hi to your Thomas. I think he just shut the door, so he's good. So I went. Cat. So I flew to Minneapolis, where I was from. I grew up in Minneapolis, but I wasn't living there at the time. I went up in the front of the stage early in the morning before Les's keynote, and I waited in line with all the other groupies because he had a huge following. I get up, I shake his hand, and I said, "You're the reason I've joined NSA. Thank you for all you do." And he turned to me and he said, "I'm going to make you proud today. Thanks for coming." Now, of course, I sat in the front row and drank the Kool-Aid and was a little kid. And of course, there was Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and all these other people that were famous at the time. And so I went ahead and I joined the National Speakers Association. And then fast forward, now I'm starting to learn the business of speaking. And at the time, my keynote fee was $3,500. It's now $25,000. So just to put it in perspective, and the only reason we use fees is that kind of lets people know there's speakers that are hundreds of thousands. So don't anybody think that we're trying to be all that in a bag of chips. So fast forward, because I'm watching the time clock. So I joined Toastmasters. I went to NSA. I met Les Brown. And a year later, he needed help with marketing. Fast forward this story. I became his manager. So I
did not know that.
We moved all of Les Brown's products and business to Wichita, Kansas. And if you go look at his old books, it's all me. I produced all of his books. I did his infomercial deals. I produced his cassette programs. We did a 13-city tour. So I managed him for 3 years while he was married to Gladys Knight. So back to your original story. Was there ever an incident that changed my life in the speaking career? So I became Les Brown's manager. At the time, I was also doing full-day seminars for Career Track, Fred Pryor seminars, National Seminars Group, and Skill Path. And I was writing curriculum and doing train the trainer program. So I was learning because I already knew how to train and do all that way before NSA. I was doing that stuff. So fast forward. So now I met Les Brown's manager, and he would come to Wichita about every quarter because we would do a planning session, even though I traveled with him everywhere, him and Gladys. So I was a little kid being able to travel with, the Gladys Knight at the time. So guess what I did, Jane?
You learned to sing Midnight Train to Georgia.
Yeah. Well, actually, I asked, I was sitting with Gladys and I said, "Can you tell me something that no one else knows?" And she said the original lyrics in that song were Midnight Plane to Atlanta. So it was never Midnight Train to Georgia. It was Midnight Plane to Atlanta was the original lyrics in that song. So I got to see some insider behind the scenes. That was a dinner one night when I was like a little kid. Anyway, so I fly Les into Wichita. And I think, Les, can you come to my Toastmasters group with me? So I go to the downtown Wichita Toastmasters. There's about 50 people in the room. Now, keep in mind, I'd quit. I'd gone on. I hadn't been back to Toastmasters in a couple of years. And I go in early and I say, "Hey, I have a guest. Can I bring a guest today into the episode or into the room?" And they're like, "Sure, Ford. It's great to see you. What you been up to?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just, working." And so in comes Les Brown. And you should have seen everybody's jaw drop. And so, of course, now the whole room is disrupted because here's Les Brown, an icon, a celebrity in my local Toastmasters group. So guess what? I said, "Hey, would you guys mind if Les gave a little presentation?" And they were like, "Yeah, because sure." So Les gets up at the front of the room, and I kid you not, this is what he says. He says, "Now, as I look out on this audience, I want you to raise your hand if you were in the room when Ford gave his presentation on becoming my manager way before he ever knew me." And of course, nobody raised their hand. And I'm like, "You were here, you were here, you were here." And I'm calling everybody out, right? As a little kid. And so he proceeded to do a presentation about who are you to tell what everybody's dream would be?
Yeah.
Who are you to say what's possible? So maybe you're listening to this episode right now and you have a dream. Maybe you want to start a business, get into business, get out of business, get a better job, whatever it is, get a dog, not get a dog, and you're ready to do something that you've never done before. Well, anything that you haven't done before, other people are going to tell you that it can't be done. So just keep that in mind. And once you do it, they're going to call you a hero for doing it. So, you have to follow your own drummer. Of course, this is for educational and informational purposes only. You can't blame Jane and say, well, the speaker, his guest just said I should get divorced, honey. No, I'm saying, you don't know where your inspiration is going to come from, but that was something that changed my life. And it also changed my life because those 3 years I was booking Les Brown at $30,000 a keynote, $25,000 a keynote. And I was speaking at Career Track for $750 a day, trying to get on-site training for $3,000, $3,500. So that was what changed my whole career and running him for 3 years. And then after about 3 years, I'm like, you know what? I'm never going to be Les Brown, but I certainly could add a lot of value. And so I've had a lot of mentors over the years, as have you. And so it goes back to the takeaway today. You can either learn from yourself, which is very costly. You can invest in books, audio programs, Audible, learning, LinkedIn learning, courses, master classes, or get your butt on a plane and get to an event and be around like-minded people that are interested in being successful. So that's what we call a long road to the payoff, which is pursue your dreams.